Hello, everybody. Welcome to another incredible show. This month, I have Simon Bowen, who is seriously a Renaissance man. What do you say? The Renaissance of wisdom, he calls himself. Can you imagine if you actually could say that about yourself? He impressed me so much when we were in Toronto at Archangel. I've heard of him, I heard his name, and listen, I have a high threshold for subject matter expertise and genius, and Simon is in that bucket. And so I'm so honored and excited that we can have some time with him today. He is quite masterful. I'm going to let him tell us his story instead of me doing it. If you're watching live with us, say hello. Let us know where you're watching or listening from. If you catch it later, still say hello. Definitely write in questions, comments. I will be reviewing my team as well as Simon. So love to keep those conversations going and so excited just to be with you this April. So with that, Simon, let's hear, and he's by the way in Australia, so if you hear this little accent, tell us tell us a little bit about your story and some of the moments that have really shaped the way you think in your career.
Sure. Well, I think people shape you more than moments. I think over the course of a career, if we just talk professional career, most people could look back over their career and identify a very small number of people, 2 or 3 people that significantly impacted them and how they think about things and how they approach things. I grew up in small country towns in Western Australia, and I'm talking 800 and 900 people. And, in those sorts of communities, if everyone doesn't pull together, the community just doesn't actually survive, through bushfires and drought and whatever might get thrown at it. And so, in those small towns, everyone is parenting you, so there's nowhere to hide in the town. Everyone knows you. And, one of the most pivotal people in my life was my first employer who, I started life in electrics and electronics, and everybody that went through his business, hit some pretty extraordinary levels in terms of, winning state competitions and all of this sort of business. And at my father's funeral, Kelvin came up to me and said, "How you doing, son?" And my father was also one of those other significant people that influenced how I think. And I said, I'm doing okay, Kelvin. And then we were chatting, and I said, how come you were so successful at training? It was predominantly young men in those days, training young men. And he said, "Oh, Simon, I was never training young men. I was never training boys. I was growing young men." And in that moment, I realized what a real leader does. And so he was running a business and everything else in a country town where you had to be competitive. But his business was a school where he was growing young men of the future. And I've had numbers of people over the course of my life that, that really gave me this sense that business, free enterprise, perhaps may be the most powerful force for good on the planet if the right people are leading it. Mm-hmm. And business should be a noble pursuit because it can do things charities can't. It can do things governments can't. And, it really is the cornerstone of any sort of society. I worked in that industry for a while. I worked in the automotive industry. I thought I'd go back and become a teacher. I spent a year with teenage students and realized I just couldn't do that for 40 years. I needed to hang out with adults. So I got into change management and organizational design and did a lot of work with, redesigning government utilities into government trading enterprises and things like that. And then went and worked as an executive manager for one of Australia's largest companies. And within 8 months, I was given the job of making about 300 people redundant, sort of one at a time over about an 8-month period. Now, I'm in my early 30s. And, people would come into the office that worked for the company for 20 odd years and not know what to do. I had one fellow come into the office, and I just had a gut feel that he had just become suicidal. on the news. And I went to my PA and said, we can't let him out of here until we've got some help. And there were two people that I felt were like that. And the responsibility you have when you have a level of authority over people that can change their life is significant. It should never be misplaced or undercalculated, if you like. If you are the manager of a team, or you are the founder of an organization, or you lead a group of people in any way, shape, or form, you are going to affect their life, and you want to be really sure about where your compass is when you're doing that, and what is your view of those people. So much of my view about business and professional career is really about what shape are people left in after they've spent time with you. We either push people down or we pull them up. Seldom do we do both at the same time. And so when you're no longer in their day-to-day experience, what shape are they left in after you've gone? And it's not a common conversation we have about leadership. How do you leave the people? We so often focus on the objectives or the outcomes and things like that. But I guess I grew up with country values, and they play out in what we do on a global basis now.
Yeah. So in your journey, what drew you to this idea of these mental models, which is what your company has done for the biggest brands out there? What is it? What are these mental models? Why do you use it? Why is it so impactful with organizations?
Sure. Well, the human brain's an interesting thing. I mean, when I thought I'd go and study education, I was moving away from electronics and electrics into human behavior and psychology. And the human brain can only make sense of what it can picture. And so if I said to you, tell me about your primary school, you wouldn't start listing off a bunch of criteria. Oh, it was a grey building, blah, blah. You would get a picture in your head. It's called imagination, image. And so the human brain, 83% of what we bring in from the world around us comes through the optic nerve. 55% of the brain's reflex reactions attached to the optic nerve. An animal will hear a noise and get on alert, but when it sees the danger, that's when it freezes, fights, or runs away. And so when we think about complex things, complex products and services, complex conversations or concepts that you need to share with people, anything that's complex is an idea in someone's head first, and you can't bridge from that to shape somebody else's thinking without addressing the middle bit. And the middle bit is, when does that idea first enter the real world so that this other person can accommodate it, right? Most complex things, the metaphysics of it is that most complex things, at least that humans have created, enter the real world as a drawing on paper or on CAD or on a computer first. Everything you and I are sitting in front of, in terms of all the technology we're using, had become a drawing before they became reality. And so when you draw people in. When you create a mental model, then draw it. And I added choreography to it. I used, stage magic and comedy as a communication art form, creating a pathway and then a punchline where in an instant you flip the paradigm to these models. So in electrics and electronics, you can't design anything or diagnose anything without a circuit diagram. So my whole early career was spent, here's a problem, something's not working, but it's electrics, you can't see it moving. And so you go through a circuit diagram to understand what's happening, then you can diagnose and repair or design and build. And so, and in the country, if my father said, go out to your uncle's farm he would draw a map in the ground with a stick, right? And you would kind of commit the map to memory, and away you go. And as you're driving to the farm, you're following that image of the map in your head. Humans hear communication so much more effectively when we actually see the communication. And then if you're drawing for people, you draw them in. Little children draw pictures for their parents,
Right.
and they're usually pretty bad, right? They're not great, but the parents go, "That's amazing, you're a genius," and they frame it and they put it on the wall or whatever. So we have a great emotional attachment to drawing. The oldest recorded human language is cave art. So we record things visually, not in words, but in imagery. And so if you take a really powerful visual or mental model that explains a complex product or service, I'll give you a really quick example. If you share screens for me, please, and then I'll draw for people. If I was talking to you, Rachel, and I wanted you to sort of make a decision sooner rather than later about something, I could talk to you about only available while the offer lasts, or only available while I'm here or while we're on the call or whatever. Or I could actually simply say to you, Rachel, as we sit here today and we think about where you're going to be in the future, people say you can't predict the future, but I actually can. I know that there are two futures ahead of you. There's this green zone of real success for you, or this red zone of crisis. And people imagine the pathway between where they are today and the future is a straight line, but it's not. Time compounds everything. So the line down to crisis is a curve. It compounds away from you. And that happens if you just drift. And what is drift? Oh, if you don't make a decision, if you don't take action, that's drift. And the line up towards success is a curve that compounds upwards. And what is that? What caused the compounding? Make a decision and take action. And the longer this goes on, the further apart those lines get. And you reach a point where you can't actually jump the gap. And so right now, you're as close to that green line as you're ever going to be. And what I most want for you is for you to be solidly on that green line, for you to know it. And we know we can help you get onto that green line in terms of you outthinking, outselling, and outserving the marketplace. And then I want you to be able to kind of go through the gateways up that line and stay there, and not behave your way off or drift off the green line. And we know that we can help you do that as well. See, the urgency, Rachel, is not mine. I don't need you to buy this while the offer lasts or anything else. I just need you to decide how long you're going to wait, because the longer you wait, the further apart the lines get. So when would be the best time for you to do this? Now, there is so much going on in there, Rachel, that I couldn't possibly cover in words only. And there's a lot hitting the subconscious mind. So when we use these powerful visual models and frameworks, we end up with a really potent conversation of a complex product or service. But it came from electronics. It came from maps drawn in the dirt to get to my uncle's farms and drop stuff off for my father, and it came from teaching 15 to 17-year-old boys things like Ohm's law and other concepts in physics, who don't remember it in words, but certainly can remember it if you give them a model to draw with. So, yeah, interesting.
So, and that's what you focus on with the business. I mean, helping people develop these mental models for the brand, the essence. I mean, you come up with these really simple but complex structures.
Yeah.
I mean, what kind of drives you to keep doing this? What are some, what are you excited about? What the people you work with, what is it about this?
Well, we tend to work with founders of companies that have brought some uncommon level of genius to the marketplace. There's a lot of people in the market that are copying everybody else, and then they're just repackaging it and selling it, and they're basically seeing what price they could get for it. But there are people that bring an uncommon level of genius to the market, but company genius. So company genius is a function of who first, the founder or the originator of the idea. Think Apple, Steve Wozniak and Steve Jobs. Then it's a function of what it is that we're offering in Apple. It's computers. And then it's how you do it, delivery mechanisms. So Apple stores and distribution systems and everything else. And then over time, as the founder steps back from the day-to-day of the business, the original genius of the founder starts to fade, and then the company starts to become commoditized. Now it's, instead of Apple, Steve Jobs, Steve Wozniak, simplicity, beauty of design, etc., or now who happen to sell computers through stores and online. Now we're just a company that sells computers through stores and online because the genius of the founder has faded. And so it became really apparent to me that companies have vision and mission statements and values. They have organizational design and structure. They focus on culture, but I kept noticing this gap through the middle. And the gap was, have you codified the genius of the company? Mm-hmm. Have you codified what is truly the unique genius you bring to the marketplace that causes all the products that fall out underneath that? And companies had not. And so, I was on a gold mine off the northeast coast of Papua New Guinea doing some work, helping them, with their organizational structures and designs. With a largely English was a second language. The Papua New Guineans speak Pidgin English. And we had to codify, what the mine was about. And that was the first time I built the genius model, which is this central model that we could, I can codify the entire genius of a company in a model that takes about 7 minutes to explain. If you go to any procurement process and explain your genius in about 7 minutes, you are way ahead of most other proponents. We had to codify that so people could understand it. If English is not your first language, it's got to be done visually.
Yeah.
Because the models transcend specific language. So I'm passionate about business. I think free enterprise is I just think it's such an important thing. But the risk takers of the world are the founders and entrepreneurs. I mean, they're the ones that put it all on the line. They're the ones that take the risk every day. They're the ones that have payroll hanging over their head. They're the ones that are constantly trying to stay ahead of the market. Think about AI, right? The founders of the world are thinking about how do we stay ahead of or get benefit from. I think they're the risk takers of the world. And, so often they've not actually figured out how to communicate the real genius behind what they do, and they're selling product. And as soon as you sell product, you're in feature and benefit world, which is commoditized. So, okay, how much is your thing compared to everybody else, as opposed to there's something unique about you, and I just have to work with you, and I can't look away, kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So I'm driven by a love for business, but I'm driven by what business can do in the world, and that those risk takers, the founders, the originators of something unique, deserve to be able to express that to the world. They need to be able to outthink, outsell, and outserve everyone else.
Well, and you kind of get stuck in your own world and working in the business, and that you, as the founder, the business owner, you start to lose track of that. And so you have this ability to kind of dig in, at least just in my short experience of you and the way that even what I've been thinking about with standout authority, and wait a minute, it's way beyond personal branding or, this process that we have, right? What are we actually doing, and getting to the DNA of what we're trying to create, which is, about humanization. So I think it's really profound, your ability to do that and to make people think so outside the box in a way that's actually really uncomfortable for an entrepreneur or business owner. So I think that's really astounding. And I'm really curious. You talked about this at Archangel a couple of months ago, but just with AI and it's commoditizing so many things even more, right? So many things that maybe we were selling or productizing are now for sure gone. And can you talk a little bit about where your head's at there?
Yeah, it's useful to, if you wouldn't mind sharing the screen again, it's useful to think about all technology, not just AI, as a line. And so if we talk about the tech line, and what technology does is just reduce things that humans do. So, the industrial age was a technology line, and it got rid of manual labor and turned people into, and it tipped people into Taylorism, which was everyone does one part of a whole thing, but they do it over and over and again and get better at it. And we use mechanization and everything else. But if we think about a bunch of things like conscience, are you going to do the right thing? Context, understanding the bigger picture, connection, compassion, concepts, communication, constructs, content, and so on. These are all things that humans have always done, right? But if we think about I'll move them over a bit. If we think about the tech line, and in this instance, it's AI. Before that tech line existed, all of that was human work.
Yeah.
But as AI came in, the first thing it wiped out was content. And so if you're a copywriter, your world changed. If you're a lawyer writing contracts, your world changed. Anything that was just content, your world changed. But constructs still existed, right? But then AI agents came to the table, and now they can put pieces together and create constructs around the content, and that disappeared. And then we would have thought communication was a pretty safe human bet, but it's not, because we've got, Delphi creating an AI version of me, for example, that people can talk to, and it's not me at all. And so communication got wiped out. Concepts were the realm of humans, but now, the tools are getting so good, they're actually creating concepts of their own. The big debate, of course, is, let's park the existential crisis. Is this the greatest advancement in human history or the greatest threat to human history? But AI is coming up with its own concepts for things now. I mean, I'm sure you would have seen that news article about two devices talking to each other, and then they just actually started speaking in their own unique language that humans couldn't understand. Two digital devices created their own language. That's a concept, right? It doesn't, and I think the line is about there at the moment. And so above the tech line, and the line really determines what human, what human value is. And above the tech line is where humans should be elevated. And what we tend to see below the tech line is they get replaced. And there's no point. The one thing we know about technology, not just AI, but technology in general, is you can't stop it, because humans are incredibly inventive, and technology serves marketing and business and war and economics and all of these forces that are bigger than any one of us.
Yeah.
And so you can't stop the tech line, right? After AI, there'll be another technology. I mean, everyone thought the world was dramatically, the world changed because of the internet, right?
Yeah.
I'm old enough to remember pre-internet, and when you literally had to go to the bank to get your money, and you didn't go to the ATM, you actually had to physically go into the bank, Well, look at how that's changed these days. So the tech line doesn't stop. It's always there, and it's always rising. And as it rises, it takes out a bunch of stuff below the line that was once the domain of humans, and it replaces the humans with that. There's stuff above the line that, is maybe at risk, and then there'll be some things further above the line that humans really have to bring to the table. I think we're in a world right now with AI where, I think that's gone. The stuff below the line has gone, quite frankly. It just really has. We need to be having some really serious conversations about the conscience of use, and the context of use of this stuff. But what does it mean in business? Your products or services below this line, I'll do it in a different color. Your products or services below this line need to use AI. You must use AI to be competitive. And that generally means drive down your cost of delivery for what you do compared to everybody else. You must use AI to be competitive for everything below the line. So if you're not using AI in some way, to help with your marketing, with your funnels, with your systems, you will just disappear, right? But then you need to be willing to look above the line and understand context and conscience. Like, who are we going to show up as? When people meet us, do they know that we're a high integrity, high value organization that cares deeply about humans? People still want to deal with people. People only care about the future if it includes us. Yeah, we don't really care about the planet, I don't think. We care about the planet so long as it includes us on the planet.
Yeah.
But planet Earth has had 5 major extinction events, at least over the hundreds of billions of years. It heals itself, but we might not be here, right? So as we think about who are we going to be as we show up in the marketplace, so I think more than ever, companies can add value to their marketing by making a really conscious choice about who they're going to be. And you'll get found out if you're just trying to pretend on that stuff. You'll get found out with social media, online platforms. I speak at conferences and people are Googling me while I'm on stage speaking. But you'll get found out really quickly, right? So who are you going to be? That means, be a good human being. And then context, how do you stay ahead of the market through invention and creativity? So, you need to be constantly looking towards what's the next biggest problem we can solve. With our genius. So the genius model is this Venn diagram with 9 segments around the outside. So with the genius we have as a company, what's the next big problem we can solve? How are we connecting with people? Now, these things might start to go. We're already seeing people having conversations with chat because they're lonely.
Yeah.
And chat's proving to be quite compassionate.
Yeah.
Right. And I read an article. Somebody said, I've been chatting to chat every night and I get some of the most intelligent, conversations with chat that I've had compared to humans. So we need to constantly looking up. If you just have a picture in your mind of the technology line and AI, imagine that line is always going up. You can try and fight it and say it's not right, it's going to wipe out jobs, or you figure out where the next opportunity for value is going to sit. Now, there is going to be a cost. There always is, but there's been a cost every time we've had a major technological advancement. The internet created a cost. Part of the cost of the internet has been retail.
Yeah.
That's been a cost of internet. So if we don't want technology, everything can stay the same, but you can't stop the tech line. We keep inventing new stuff. But I would encourage people to think about that line continues to rise, and it's doing it at a real pace right now. Go right to the top and anchor yourself there, because the higher you can operate up here, the more of this you can cover. But if you're here at the moment and you're just trying to figure out how to get to there and figure out how to get to there, the line will beat you. Does that make some sense?
It does. It makes a lot of sense. And it's not just something that it's going to happen overnight and you're going to know what the heck you're doing, I think that's where your mental models, are kind of nearing the end of our interview, but I'm curious. So if you're watching today and you're thinking like I am, like, how do I stay at that top? Right. And we're thinking about a lot of stuff with standout authority. How would you support other people? What is the best thing to do?
Well, I think 2 of the most important systems in any business are the system for thinking and the system for influence. specifically, a business is only as good as the idea on which it's built. And you said it before, founders and owners get caught in the day-to-day of the business, and they're not creating time to think deeply about what they do, nor do they have the mechanisms for engaging their team in thinking deeply about what they do. So the first purpose we put the visual models toward is this deep and profound thinking inside the business. We've forgotten how to think at a profound level. We've lost the art of real discovery, and that's because all pause has been removed from the world. Newton saw the apple fall from the tree because he was sitting there taking a moment, right? But had he had a phone in front of him scrolling, he wouldn't have seen the apple fall from the tree. Yeah. So all pause has been removed from the world. So where is the deep and profound thinking happening? And if people sort of evaluate their week, when was the last time they thought really deeply about the unique genius they bring to the marketplace? And then how do you involve your team in that? Now, as soon as you unpack your thinking into a model, your team can become a part of the thinking process. So most of our clients, so fundamentally, we work with clients to, first of all, build a genius model to codify the genius of their business. And then we build a suite of models that they can use to market and sell with. The futures model I showed you is a model we teach people to use to close deals in a very specific way. But the most common bit of feedback we get from people that work with us is my head hurts, but in a good way. We've never done this depth of thinking about what we do before. Now, as people turn to AI to do things like write books and come up with concepts and things, what is the depth of thinking really, going to look like? And so, our goal actually is to get people to think more deeply, more profoundly about what they do. Like, really, how does this impact? And what's the biggest problem you can solve? And then the second thing is the system for influence. The ability to influence people to make choices in your favor, customers to buy from you, staff to work hard, suppliers to serve you, banks to fund you, regulators to give you authority to operate. And the models become a natural tool for communication. It's not the person with the best solution that wins in any market. It's the person that communicates the best that wins in any market. The parents that parent the best are the ones that communicate the best. The teachers that have the greatest student outcomes are the ones that communicate the best. Communication is the superpower, right? But we're handing a lot of that over to AI.
Right.
And so, if you have really deliberate mechanisms for communication, like a model, it's a technology of its own, right? And I'm actually encouraging people these days to almost go back to the board and think really deeply and profoundly about what you do. You and I had a chat. I can remember it really vividly. Rachel was standing in the middle of the room and in Toronto, and we're talking about what you do, and it was that push process of, yeah, that's nice, but it's not grabbing me yet. It's not deep enough. Go a bit harder. That's a really difficult thing to do, but it's actually, as the AI line rises, go deeper, folks, into what you do. Be more profound about what you do. How does this really actually impact? And don't do it for marketing terms. Actually get real about it. And basically go to the top of that line. Go to the top and be one of the people that elevates rather than gets replaced.
And I have to say, your push on me was so helpful. And one of the things that, as it was going in my brain, I said, as I was talking to you, I said, well, we really press the edge. And you said that's something you have something there. And from that conversation, we've been thinking about that. Like, what does it mean to press the edge in everything that we're doing? And that was just a little bit of time with Simon, right? Just for him. And I am quite much a thinker and academic in that way. And I so appreciate your way of getting us to think deeper. I think I couldn't agree more that is the new currency. And even on your, communication, yes, being wiped out, but the AI is not going to have this conversation right here.
No.
The AI can write the whole script for me, all the questions, but at the end of the day, we're sitting here together and I need to know how to communicate. And so those skills are going to become even more important. So I really appreciate you, Simon. People, if you're not following him and you haven't checked out mentalmodels.com, all of these, please, 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 please. He is so incredibly smart and a thinker, which I appreciate. Thank you so much, Simon. Is there anything else you want to add? Any final takeaway or where they can keep in touch with you?
Well, they can go to modelsmethod.com. I do a 20-minute teaching every month. I turn on Zoom, I get a 20-minute countdown timer running, and I just go hard for 20 minutes. And it's probably the most popular thing we do. So people can subscribe to that. They'll get a notification. They'll get a workbook for the 20-minute teaching and everything. It's probably the best place to come. And I'll give you a link, Rachel, perhaps that we can share with people. I think I coined this term bias safety quite a few years ago. And if free enterprise is one of the most powerful forces for good on the planet, then selling should be the most noble thing we do. And often it's seen as manipulative, and often it is manipulative, but selling should be the most noble thing we do. And everybody that buys from you should experience buyer safety, meaning they feel safer with you at every step of the process than they would with anyone else. Mm-hmm. And so I have a whole teaching around buyer safety, and I'd love to gift that to people and give you the link. They can look at the 5 stages of buyer safety. There's a couple of little training videos there, and the buyer safety checklist. It'll be an interesting thing for people to do, to go through their sales sequence and their sales methodology and evaluate it in terms of, does the buyer feel safer with you through every interaction, or do they feel less safe with you? That by itself will change the business, and safety is a human thing.
Yeah.
AI isn't going to make your customers feel safer.
Yeah.
But
many times not, they feel less safe.
Absolutely.
I'm having clients, especially from a corporate side, they're having me turn off all AI, any assistant. I mean, we have to go note taking, nothing gets to record, none of that. These are people in tech at the Fortune, 100 Fortune. So to your point, it is a really, really important currency.
Yeah, absolutely. Humans make humans safe, right? Yeah. So I'd love to share that with you, and but they can go to modelsmethod.com. There's a whole bunch of content there. They can binge, see some of the models, and then join us on the 20-minute teaching.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Simon. Everybody, thank you so much for watching, listening, and please reach out to Simon. Go to the website. We'll have that in the comments. And I hope you have a great rest of your April. Spring is here, at least in North America side of the world. So I will see you back next month. Please keep in touch. DM me if any questions that y'all have. Thanks again, Simon. Have a great rest of your weekend, everybody.
Thank you so much.